The explosions lit up the dark sky above Altara Prime like deadly fireworks. Commander Zektar pressed his blue-scaled hands against the cold metal wall of the command bunker. Each blast made the ground shake under his feet. The sound of dying. Soldiers filled the air outside. "Sir, we have lost another defense tower," reported Lieutenant Crix, his voice shaking with fear. The young officer's green eyes were wide with panic. "The Vorthans are getting closer to the main city." Zektar closed his eyes for a moment. 3 years ago, the Kepler Alliance had been strong. 12 different species working together in peace. They had built cities on 100 worlds. They had shared knowledge and art. They had believed the galaxy could be a place of harmony. Then the Vorthans came. The reptilian warriors had swept across the galaxy like a plague. Their black ships blocked out the sun wherever they went. Their weapons turned entire planets into burning rocks. The Vorthans did not want to talk. They did not want to trade. They only wanted to destroy everything that was not them. "How many ships do they have in orbit?" Zektar asked. "Over 200, sir," Crix replied. "Our last 12 cruisers cannot hold them back much longer." Zektar walked to the small window. Far above, he could see the flashes of battle in space. The Alliance ships were fighting bravely, but they were losing. Soon, the Vorthans would land their armies on the planet. When that happened, the war would be over. The Alliance had tried everything. They had sent their best diplomats to talk with the Vorthan leaders. The diplomats never came back. They had built bigger weapons and stronger shields. The Vorthans had simply built bigger weapons, too. They had called for help from every species in the galaxy. No one answered. "Sir, incoming message from Admiral Thren," another officer called out. Zektar hurried to the communication console. The face of Admiral Thren appeared on the screen. The old warrior's fur was gray with age, but his eyes still burned with determination. Behind him, Zektar could see the bridge of the last Alliance battleship shaking from enemy fire. "Commander, we cannot hold them much longer," Thren said. "My ship is badly damaged. The others are already gone." "How long do you have?" Zektar asked. "Maybe 6 hours. Maybe less." Thren paused as another explosion rocked his ship. "You need to evacuate the planet. Get as many people as you can to the transport ships. There are not enough transports." Zektar said quietly, "We can only save maybe 10,000 people. There are 3 million on this world." Thren's face grew sad. "Then we have failed them all." The communication ended. Zektar stared at the blank screen. In 6 hours, the last Alliance fleet would be destroyed. In 12 hours, Vorthan soldiers would march through the streets of every city on Altara Prime. In 1 day, another world would die. "Sir," Lieutenant Crix said softly, "there might be one more option." Zektar turned to look at him. "What do you mean?" "The old databases. The ones from when the Alliance first started. I have been looking through them for any species we might have missed. Any planet that might help us." "We have already asked everyone," Zektar said. "The Centauri will not fight. The Vega Republic is too far away. The others are too weak or too scared. But there is one entry I found," Crix continued. "It is very old, from about 400 years ago. A species called humans from a planet called Earth." Zektar frowned. "I have never heard of them." "Neither had I. The file is small. It says they had just learned to travel faster than light. They seemed young and primitive. The Alliance Council decided they were not worth contacting. If they were primitive 400 years ago, what could they do now?" Zektar asked. "Maybe nothing," Crix admitted. "But maybe they grew stronger. Maybe they learned to fight." "What? If they are still out there?" Zektar walked back to the window. Another explosion lit up the sky. He could hear the sound of children crying in the distance. Soon, Those children would be dead. Everyone would be dead. Where is this Earth? He asked. The records show it is in a system called Sol. About 3 days' travel by our fastest ships. 3 days, Zektar repeated. We do not have 3 days. No, sir. But we have long-range communication. We could send a message through hyperspace. It would reach them in hours. Zektar thought about it. What were the chances that this unknown species would help them? What were the chances they were even still alive? Most species that the Alliance had discovered 400 years ago had either joined them or been destroyed by other enemies. But what choice did they have? What would we tell them? Zektar asked. The truth, Crick said. That we are dying. That we need help. That we have nowhere else to turn. Another explosion shook the bunker. This one was closer. Through the window, Zektar could see Vorthan fighters swooping down toward the city. Soon, they would start bombing the civilian areas. Do it, Zektar said. Send the message. Crix moved quickly to the communications console. His fingers danced over the controls as he prepared the hyperspace transmitter. What should I say, sir? Zektar thought for a moment. What did you say to a species you had never met? How did you ask strangers to die for you? Tell them who we are, he said finally. Tell them what is happening to us. Tell them we are the last free worlds in this part of the galaxy. Tell them that if we fall, the Vorthans will keep spreading until they destroy everything. And if they ask why they should help us, tell them we have nothing to offer except our gratitude. Tell them we know they do not know us. Tell them we are sorry to burden them with our problems. Zektar paused. And tell them we are dying. Crix began typing the message. As he worked, more explosions lit up the sky. The Vorthan fleet was getting bolder. They knew the Alliance could not fight back much longer. Message ready, sir, Crix said. Send it, Zektar ordered. The message shot out into space, carried by invisible waves that could cross the galaxy in hours. It raced past dead worlds and burning fleets. It carried the hopes of 3 million people who would probably be dead before anyone read it. Now what? Crix asked. Now we wait, Zektar said. And we fight as long as we can. But in his heart, he did not expect an answer. Why would anyone come to help people they had never met? The galaxy was full of suffering. Every species had their own problems. The humans, if they were still alive, would probably ignore the message. They would decide it was not their fight. Zektar returned to his command post. There was still work to do. People to evacuate. Defenses to organize. He would not give up. Even if hope was gone outside, the battle continued. The Alliance fought on, not knowing that their desperate message was already racing through the darkness toward a small blue world they had forgotten long ago. Admiral Jake Morrison was drinking coffee when the message arrived. He stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching the red planet Mars through the large window. The coffee was strong and bitter, just how he liked it. At 62 years, old Morrison had seen many battles. His gray hair and scarred face told stories of wars fought in the darkness between stars. Admiral, we have an incoming transmission, called Lieutenant Commander Amy Rodriguez from her station. The young woman's voice was calm, but Morrison could hear something different in it. It is coming through hyperspace. Origin unknown. Morrison set down his coffee cup. Unknown? Are you sure? Yes, sir. The signal is weak, but it is definitely from outside our territory. Very far outside. Morrison walked over to Rodriguez's station. She was his best communications officer, a smart woman who had grown up on the colonies near Jupiter. If she said the signal was strange, then it was strange. Can you decode it? Morrison asked. Already working on it, sir. The language is not human, but the computer is finding patterns. Rodriguez's fingers moved quickly over her controls. "Sir, I think this is a distress call." Morrison felt his stomach tighten. Distress calls from unknown species usually meant one of two things. Either someone was in terrible danger, or someone was trying to trick them. Both could be deadly. "Put it through," Morrison ordered. The message played on the main screen. The voice was clearly not human, but the computer translated the words into English. Morrison listened carefully as the alien commander explained their situation. The Kepler Alliance, the Vorthan Empire, entire worlds being destroyed. When the message ended, the bridge was quiet. Morrison stared at the screen, thinking. He had never heard of these species before. The Alliance, the Vorthans, none of them were in Earth's databases. "How far away did this come from?" Morrison asked. "Approximately 2,000 light-years, sir," Rodriguez replied. "The signal has been traveling for about 6 hours." Morrison nodded. That was far beyond Earth's normal area of operations. The human colonies only extended about 50 light-years from Earth. Whatever was happening out there, it was happening in a part of the galaxy that humans had never explored. "Sir," Rodriguez said quietly, "there is something else." The message included tactical data, information about the enemy fleet. "Show me," Morrison said. New images appeared on the screen. Pictures of dark ships with strange designs. Numbers showing. Fleet sizes and weapon types. Morrison studied the data carefully. The enemy fleet was huge, over 200 ships. Their technology looked advanced, but not impossible to fight. "Get me President Carter," Morrison ordered. "Priority channel." Within minutes, President Helen Carter appeared on the screen. The 50-year-old woman looked tired, but her eyes were sharp and alert. She had been in office for 6 years, and she had learned to make hard decisions quickly. "Admiral, I assume this is about the alien message we just received," Carter said. "Yes." "Madam President, have you reviewed the data?" "My advisors are looking at it now. Tell me your thoughts." Morrison chose his words carefully. "The message appears genuine. These people are facing extinction. They have asked for help from a species they know nothing about. That takes courage." "Or desperation," Carter replied. "Jake, we do not know these people. We do not know their enemies. This could be a trap." "It could be," Morrison agreed. "But the tactical data suggests otherwise. If this was a trap, they would not need to show us detailed information about their enemies' weaknesses." Carter was quiet for a moment. "Even if the message is real, why should we get involved? This is not our fight." Morrison had been expecting this question. "Because it is the right thing to do, Madam President. These people are dying. They reached out to us because they have nowhere else to turn. And if we help them, we make enemies of this Vorthan Empire. We could be starting a war that Earth is not ready for. With respect, Madam President, we are as ready as we will ever be. The Third Fleet is the strongest force we have ever assembled. Our new weapons have been tested and proven. If we are going to make a stand against evil in the galaxy, this is our chance." Carter looked thoughtful. "How long would it take to reach them?" 4 days at maximum speed," Morrison replied. "But according to the message, they may not have that long. Jake, you are asking me to commit our best ships and our best people to a battle on the other side of the galaxy. For people we have never met," Morrison nodded. "Yes, Madam President." "I am." Carter ended the transmission. Morrison knew she would call an emergency meeting of the Earth Council. Representatives from every major nation and colony would debate the decision. Some would say it was too risky. Others would say it was not Earth's responsibility. But Morrison hoped that enough of them would remember what it meant to be human. Humans had always been fighters. They had fought each other for thousands of years before learning to fight together. They had survived ice ages and plagues and wars that almost destroyed their species. They had reached for the stars even when many said it was impossible. Most importantly, humans had always helped each other when things got bad. It was part of their nature. When one group was in trouble, others would come to help. It did not matter if they were strangers. It did not matter if it was dangerous. Humans helped because that was what humans did. 2 hours later, Morrison's communication system chimed. President Carter appeared on the screen again, but this time she was not alone. Behind her stood the leaders of the Earth Council. Admiral Morrison, Carter said formally, the Earth Council has voted. We will answer the distress call. Morrison felt relief flood through him. Thank you, Madam President. The vote was not unanimous, Carter continued, but it was decisive. We cannot stand by while innocent people are slaughtered. The Third Fleet is authorized to depart immediately. Understood? We will not let you down. Morrison immediately began issuing orders. The Third Fleet had been docked at the Mars Naval Base for 3 months, undergoing upgrades and training. Now it was time to see if all that preparation would pay off. Captain Lisa Turner received her orders aboard the heavy cruiser USS Vengeance. She was one of Morrison's best officers, a tough woman who had earned her command through skill and courage. Her ship would lead the advanced scout group. Captain Ryan Blake commanded the destroyer USS Lightning. He was young for a captain, only 35, but he had proven himself in the colony wars. His ship was fast and deadly, perfect for hit-and-run attacks. Captain Maria Santos led the frigate squadron from her ship, the USS Falcon. She was a veteran of the asteroid belt conflicts, an expert in small ship tactics. Her frigates could strike quickly and disappear before the enemy could respond. Within 6 hours, the entire Third Fleet was ready to depart. 37 ships carrying over 20,000 crew members. They carried the hopes of Earth and the fate of the Kepler Alliance in their hands. Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance as the fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace. Through the window, he could see the other ships in formation around his flagship. Each one was a masterpiece of human engineering, equipped with the best weapons and shields that Earth could build. All ships report ready, Admiral, Rodriguez announced. Morrison nodded. Take us out, Commander. Maximum speed. The stars stretched into lines of light as the fleet entered hyperspace. Behind them, Earth grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared completely. Ahead of them lay the unknown, a battle that would determine the fate of species they had never met. As the fleet raced through the darkness, Morrison thought about the message they had received. The alien commander had sounded desperate, but not defeated. He had reached out to strangers because he believed that somewhere in the galaxy there were people who would help. Morrison smiled grimly. The alien commander had been right. Help was coming, and it carried the firepower of the entire human fleet. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Altara system, like ghosts appearing from the darkness. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching the tactical display with growing concern. The situation was even worse than the distress message had suggested. Report, Commander Rodriguez, Morrison said quietly. Sir, we count over 200 Vorthan ships in orbit around the planet. They are arranged in a standard siege formation, bombarding the surface continuously. Rodriguez paused, checking her instruments. I am also detecting wreckage. Lots of it. Morrison nodded grimly. The Alliance fleet had been destroyed. The brave defenders who had sent the distress call were probably dead. Only the planet remained, and it was dying slowly under the enemy bombardment. Any sign that they have detected us? Morrison asked. No, sir. Our stealth systems are working perfectly. We are invisible to their sensors. Morrison was grateful for that small advantage. Earth's scientists had developed stealth technology that could hide entire fleets from enemy detection. It had been expensive and difficult to build, but now it might save thousands of lives. Bring us closer. I want to see exactly what we are dealing with. The fleet moved deeper into the system, staying hidden in the sensor shadows of asteroids and space debris. Morrison studied the enemy ships through his binoculars. They were massive, dark vessels with sharp edges and weapon ports covering their hulls. They looked like mechanical sharks, built only for destruction. "Sir, incoming transmission from Captain Turner," Rodriguez announced. Morrison activated the communication system. Captain Lisa Turner appeared on the screen, her face serious, but determined. Her heavy cruiser USS Vengeance was leading the scout group, getting closer to the enemy than anyone else. "Admiral, I have completed my reconnaissance of the enemy fleet," Turner reported. "The Vorthons are using a rigid formation pattern. All ships are arranged in perfect geometric lines around the planet. Interesting. What else have you learned?" "There. Command structure appears highly centralized. There is one massive ship at the center of the formation, much larger than the others. All communication traffic is flowing to and from that vessel." Morrison studied the tactical display. Turner was right. The Vorthons fought like a machine, with every ship following orders from a single command center. It was efficient, but it also created a weakness. If the command ship was destroyed, the entire fleet might collapse. "Any sign of survivors on the planet?" Morrison asked. "Yes, sir. Our sensors are picking up scattered resistance groups. They are still fighting, but they cannot hold out much longer." Morrison felt a surge of respect for the Alliance defenders. Even with their fleet destroyed and their world under siege, they were still fighting. That took courage. "Sir," called Commander Tony Phillips from the tactical station, "I have completed my analysis of the enemy weapons and defenses." Phillips was Morrison's chief tactical officer, a brilliant man who could find weaknesses in any enemy system. He had studied the Vorthon ships for hours, looking for ways to defeat them. "What have you found?" Morrison asked. "The Vorthons are using energy shields designed to stop the Alliance weapons. But their shields operate on a different frequency than our plasma cannons. I believe our weapons will be highly effective against them." Morrison smiled. That was the advantage of fighting an enemy who had never seen human technology. The Vorthons had built their defenses to stop Alliance weapons, not human ones. "What about their weapons?" Morrison asked. "Powerful, but slow to target. They are designed for long-range bombardment, not close combat. If we can get inside their formation, their own ships will block their firing lines." Morrison nodded. "Recommendations? Hit them fast and hard. Target the command ship first. If we can destroy their central command, the rest of the fleet will be confused and vulnerable." Morrison walked to the center of the bridge, thinking. The human fleet was outnumbered 6-1. The enemy ships were individually larger and more heavily armed. But humans had advantages too. They were faster, more flexible, and their weapons were designed for ship-to-ship combat. "Sir," Rodriguez said suddenly, "I am receiving a transmission from the planet. It is weak, but I can make out the words." The voice that came through the speakers was tired and desperate. It was the same alien commander who had sent the original distress call. Commander Zektar was still alive, still fighting. "This is Alliance. Command to any ships in the system," the voice said. "Our situation is critical. We have maybe 2 hours before the final defense perimeter falls. If anyone can hear this, please help us." Morrison felt a fire burning in his chest. These people had called for help, and Earth had answered. Now it was time to show them what human warriors could do. "Open a channel to all ships," Morrison ordered. "Channel." "Open, sir," Rodriguez replied. Morrison activated the fleet communication system. On screens throughout the 37 ships of the Third Fleet, his face appeared. 20,000 crew members looked to him for leadership. "This is Admiral Morrison. To all ships," he began. "We have traveled 2,000 light years to answer a call for help. Below us is a world under siege. Innocent people are dying while we watch. This is not our fight, but we are going to make it our fight." He paused, looking at the faces of his crew. They were young and old, men and women from every nation on Earth. They had volunteered to serve in the fleet, knowing that someday they might be asked to fight and die for strangers. "The enemy outnumbers us 6-1, Morrison continued. "Their ships are bigger than ours. They have been winning this war for 3 years, but they have never fought humans before. They do not know what we are capable of." Morrison could see the determination growing in the eyes of his crew. They were ready. "We are going to divide into 3 battle groups," Morrison explained. "Captain Turner will lead Group Alpha in a direct assault on the enemy command ship. Captain Blake will take Group Beta on a flanking attack against their supply vessels. Captain Santos will lead Group Gamma in hit-and-run strikes against their rear guard." He looked directly into the camera. "Remember, we are not just fighting for ourselves. We are fighting for the idea that no cry for help should go unanswered. We are fighting to show the galaxy that humans stand with those who cannot stand alone." Morrison ended the transmission. Around him, the bridge crew prepared for battle. Rodriguez checked the communication systems. Phillips updated the tactical computers. Navigation Officer Lieutenant Bill Carter calculated attack vectors. "Sir," Carter reported, "all battle groups are in position and ready to attack." Morrison looked out at the enemy fleet one more time. 200 ships against 37. In any normal calculation, the humans would be destroyed. But Morrison had learned long ago that battles were not won by numbers alone. They were won by courage, skill, and the willingness to fight for something greater than yourself. "Captain Turner, you may begin your attack when ready," Morrison said into his communicator. "Understood, Admiral. Beginning attack run now." Morrison watched as the USS Vengeance and her escorts dropped their stealth fields and charged toward the enemy command ship. Their plasma cannons were already charging, ready to introduce the Vorthans to human firepower. The battle for Altara Prime was about to begin. On the planet below, Commander Zeke Tar was still coordinating the final defense when his communication officer called out in excitement. "Sir, new ships are appearing on sensors. They are attacking the Vorthans." Zektar looked up at the display in disbelief. Unknown. Ships were emerging from empty space, their weapons blazing. The Vorthans were scrambling to respond, but they had been caught completely by surprise. "Who are they?" Zektar asked. "Unknown, sir, but they are using weapons we have never seen before. The Vorthan shields are not stopping them." Zektar felt something he had not felt in months. Hope. Someone had answered their call. Someone had come to help. The battle for the galaxy was about to change forever. The first human plasma cannon fired at exactly 13:47 hours. Ship time. The bright blue beam cut through space like a sword of light, striking the shields of a Vorthan cruiser. The alien ship's energy barriers, designed to stop Alliance weapons, offered no protection against the unknown technology. The plasma burned through the hull as if it were paper. The Vorthan ship exploded in a ball of fire and metal. "Direct hit," called Commander Phillips from the tactical station. "Their shields are useless against our weapons." Admiral Morrison watched the battle unfold from the bridge of the USS Defiance. Captain Turner's USS Vengeance was leading the charge toward the massive Vorthan command ship, her plasma cannons firing continuously. Behind her, the cruisers USS Intrepid and USS Warrior added their firepower to the assault. The Vorthans were slow to react. For 3 years, They had faced only Alliance weapons. They had grown comfortable with their superiority. Now they were experiencing something completely new, and their rigid command structure was not adapting quickly enough. "Sir, Captain Blake's group is beginning their flanking attack," Rodriguez reported. Morrison switched his view to the tactical display. Captain Ryan Blake's destroyer squadron was moving around the edge of the Vorthen formation, targeting the supply ships in the rear. The USS Lightning led the attack, followed by the destroyers USS Storm and USS Thunder. Blake's ships were smaller than the cruisers, but they were incredibly fast. They darted between the massive Vorthen vessels like wolves hunting among cattle. Their plasma cannons were smaller too, but they fired much more rapidly. The first supply ship exploded when Blake's torpedoes found its ammunition storage. The explosion was so large that it damaged 3 nearby ships. A chain reaction began as secondary explosions spread through the Vorthen rear guard. "Excellent work," Morrison said with satisfaction. "Captain Santos, begin your attack." "Captain." Maria Santos commanded the frigate squadron from her ship, the USS Falcon. Frigates were the smallest warships in the human fleet, but they were also the most agile. Santos had positioned her 12 ships in a wide arc around the Vorthen formation. "All frigates, attack pattern Delta," Santos ordered. "Hit their engines and jump out before they can respond." The frigates attacked like a swarm of angry bees. They would appear suddenly, fire their weapons, and disappear before the Vorthens could target them. Each attack was small, but together they created chaos in the enemy formation. The Vorthens were fighting on 3 fronts now. Their rigid formation was breaking apart as individual ships tried to respond to threats from multiple directions. Without clear orders from their command ship, many captains were making their own decisions. This led to confusion and mistakes. "Sir, the enemy command ship is returning fire," Phillips reported. Morrison could see the massive vessel on the main screen. It was 3 times the size of the USS Defiance, with weapon ports covering its entire hull. Now those weapons were firing at Captain Turner's ships. The space around the USS Vengeance filled with enemy fire. Red beams and explosive shells created a deadly web of destruction. Turner's ship rolled and twisted, using its superior speed to avoid the worst of the bombardment. "Captain Turner, report," Morrison called. "We are taking heavy fire, but our shields are holding," Turner replied. Her voice was calm, despite the chaos around her. "The enemy command ship is tough. We need more firepower to break through its defenses." Morrison made a decision. "All ships converge on the command vessel. We end this now." The USS Defiance turned toward the center of the battle, its massive plasma cannons charging. The flagship was the largest ship in the human fleet, armed with weapons that could destroy a city. Now those weapons were aimed at the heart of the Vorthen fleet. "Sir, incoming transmission from the planet," Rodriguez announced. Morrison activated the communication system. Commander Zektar's face appeared on the screen. The alien commander looked amazed and hopeful. "Unknown ships. This is Commander Zektar of the Alliance forces. We do not know who you are, but we thank you for coming to our aid." "This is Admiral Morrison of the Earth Defense Force," Morrison replied. "We received your distress call. We are here to help." Zektar's expression changed to one of wonder. "Earth? You are the humans? But how did you find us?" "You sent us a message asking for help," Morrison said. "Humans do not ignore calls for help, but you are so far away. Why would you risk your lives for strangers?" Morrison smiled. "Because that is what humans do." The conversation was interrupted by another explosion. The USS Vengeance had scored a direct hit on the command ship's main weapons array. The massive vessel was wounded, but still fighting. "Commander Zektar, we need information about the enemy command structure," Morrison said. "If we destroy that big ship, what happens to the rest of their fleet?" The Vorthans follow a strict hierarchy, Zektar replied. All orders come from the command ship. If it is destroyed, the other ships will be lost without leadership. Morrison nodded. Then that is our target. Thank you, Commander. Keep your people safe. We will handle the rest. The Admiral ended the transmission and focused on the battle. The Vorthan command ship was fighting desperately now, its weapons firing in all directions. But the human ships were closing in from multiple angles. Captain Blake's destroyers had finished with the supply ships and were now attacking the command vessel's engines. Captain Santos's frigates were hitting its sensor arrays and communication systems. Captain Turner's cruisers were battering its main weapons. The USS Defiance joined the attack, its heavy plasma cannons adding devastating firepower to the assault. The command ship's shields began to fail under the concentrated attack. Sir, the enemy is trying to retreat, Phillips reported. Some of their ships are breaking formation. Morrison could see Vorthan vessels at the edge of the formation turning away from the battle. They were trying to escape to hyperspace, but they were moving too slowly. All ships, do not let them escape. We need to end this threat here and now. The human fleet spread out to intercept the fleeing Vorthans. The destroyers and frigates were fast enough to catch most of them. The battle became a series of small fights scattered across the system. But the main fight was still at the center, where the command ship was making its last stand. The massive vessel had lost most of its weapons, but it was still dangerous. Its remaining guns fired continuously, trying to destroy as many human ships as possible. The USS Vengeance took a direct hit from a heavy cannon. The cruiser's shields failed, and enemy fire punched through its armor. Captain Turner's ship began to drift, its engines damaged. This is Turner to Fleet Command, the captain reported. We are badly damaged, but still fighting. Do not worry about us. Take down that command ship. Morrison felt anger rise in his chest. These people had fought bravely to help strangers, and now they were paying the price. The Vorthans would learn what happened when they hurt human warriors. All ships, concentrate fire on the command vessel. Everything we have. The entire human fleet turned its weapons on the enemy flagship. Plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, and missile launchers all fired at once. The space around the command ship became a storm of destruction. The Vorthan shields collapsed completely. Human weapons tore through the hull like it was made of thin metal. Explosions erupted across the massive vessel as critical systems failed. Sir, the command ship is breaking apart, Phillips reported. Morrison watched as the huge vessel split. In two, secondary explosions ran along its length as power systems overloaded. The bridge section separated from the main hull and began to tumble through space. Then the entire ship exploded in a flash of light that could be seen from the planet's surface. The effect on the rest of the Vorthan fleet was immediate. Ships that had been fighting desperately suddenly stopped firing. Their formations collapsed as individual captains realized they were cut off from command. Some ships tried to surrender. Others attempted to flee. Most just drifted in space, their crews unsure what to do. This is Admiral Morrison to all Vorthan vessels. Morrison broadcast on all frequencies. Your command ship is destroyed. Your fleet is defeated. Surrender now, and you will be treated fairly. Continue fighting, and you will be destroyed. Most of the Vorthan ships powered down their weapons. The few that tried to continue fighting were quickly overwhelmed by the human forces. Within an hour, the battle was over. The space around Altara Prime was filled with wreckage and drifting ships. The Vorthan fleet that had terrorized the galaxy for 3 years was broken. The siege was ended. On the planet below, Commander Zektar watched the enemy ships go dark one by one. The bombardment had stopped. The sky was quiet for the first time in months. The humans had kept their promise. They had come to help, and they had won. But the real victory was not just the destruction of the Vorthen fleet. It was the knowledge that somewhere in the galaxy there were people who would answer when others called for help. The universe was a little less dark because of what had happened here. The battle was over, but the story was just beginning. The silence after the battle was strange. For months, the people of Altara Prime had lived with the constant sound of explosions and weapon fire. Now the sky was quiet, and the only lights above were stars and the scattered hulks of defeated ships. Commander Zeke-Tar stood in the ruins of his command bunker, looking up through a hole in the ceiling. 3 days ago, he had sent a desperate message to an unknown species, expecting nothing in return. Now those same strangers had saved his world and destroyed the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. "Sir, Admiral Morrison is requesting permission to land," Lieutenant Crix reported. The young officer's voice was filled with wonder. "He wants to meet with you personally." Zeke-Tar nodded. "Tell him he is welcome." Clear landing pad 7-4. His shuttle. An hour later, Zeke-Tar stood on the damaged landing pad, watching a human shuttle descend from the sky. The craft was sleek and efficient, unlike the bulky Alliance vessels he was used to. As it touched down, he wondered what these humans would be like in person. Admiral Morrison stepped out of the shuttle, followed by several other human officers. Zeke-Tar was surprised by how similar they looked to his own species. They walked upright, had 2 arms and 2 legs, and their faces showed intelligence and determination. But there was something else in their eyes, something that reminded Zeke-Tar of the old warrior legends. "Commander Zeke-Tar, I presume," Morrison said, extending his hand in the human greeting. "I am Admiral Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force." Zeke-Tar took the offered hand, feeling the firm grip. "Admiral Morrison, I cannot express how grateful we are for your help." "You saved our world," Morrison smiled. "We were happy to help, though I have to say, you and your people fought bravely. Most species would have surrendered long before we arrived." "We had nowhere else to go," Zeke-Tar replied. "This was our last world." "Not anymore," Morrison said. "The Vorthen fleet is destroyed. Your people are safe." As they walked through the damaged city, Zeke-Tar saw something he had not seen in months. People were coming out of their shelters. Children were playing in the streets. Hope had returned to Altara Prime. "Admiral, I must ask," Zeke-Tar said. "Why? Did you come? Your world is so far away. This was not your fight." Morrison stopped walking and looked at the alien commander. "Commander, let me ask you something. If you had received a distress call from Earth, what would you have done?" Zeke-Tar thought about it. "I would have wanted to help, but the Alliance Council would have debated for weeks. They would have worried about the risks and the costs. By the time they made a decision, it would have been too late." "That is the difference between us," Morrison said. "When someone calls for help, humans do not debate, we act. We believe that every thinking being has the right to live free from fear." They reached the main government building, where the surviving Alliance leaders were waiting. Zeke-Tar introduced Morrison to the others, including Commander Elena Wright, who had led the ground defense forces, and Dr. Marcus Venn, the Alliance's top scientist. "Admiral Morrison," Dr. Venn said, "we have been studying the wreckage of the Vorthen ships. Your weapons technology is far more advanced than anything we have seen. How did you develop such powerful systems?" Morrison smiled. "Humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We have learned to be very good at it. But our real strength is not our weapons. It is our willingness to work together when facing a common threat." Over the next few days, Morrison and his officers worked with the Alliance leaders to plan for the future. The immediate threat was over, but the Vorthen Empire was vast. There would be other fleets, other attacks. "We need to think about this strategically," Morrison explained during one of their meetings. The Vorthans will send scouts to find out what happened here. When they do not return, they will send a larger force. How long do we have? Commander Wright asked. Maybe 6 months. Maybe less. We need to use that time to prepare. Morrison proposed something that shocked the Alliance leaders. We want to form a permanent alliance between Earth and your worlds. Not just for this war, but for the future. Zektar looked surprised. But Admiral, your world is so far from ours. What would you gain from such an alliance? Knowledge, Morrison replied. Your people have technologies we do not have. Medical advances, agricultural techniques, scientific discoveries. We can learn from each other. Dr. Venn leaned forward. And in return, we share our military technology and tactical knowledge. We help you build a fleet that can defend itself. We teach you how to fight like humans. The proposal was revolutionary. For centuries, the Alliance had been a peaceful organization focused on trade and cooperation. The idea of building a military force had been rejected many times. But the Vorthan invasion had changed everything. There is something else, Morrison continued. We have been monitoring communications across this part of the galaxy. The Vorthans have conquered dozens of worlds. There are millions of people living under their rule, waiting for someone to free them. Commander Wright understood immediately. You want to take the fight to them? Yes. We cannot wait for them to attack again. We need to liberate the conquered worlds and destroy their ability to make war. Zektar felt a chill run through him. Morrison was talking about fighting a war across half the galaxy against an enemy that had never been defeated. It sounded impossible, but then he remembered the battle he had just witnessed. The humans had destroyed a fleet that everyone thought was unbeatable. Maybe impossible was just another word for something that had not been tried yet. What would you need from us? Zektar asked. Ships, crews, and bases for our fleet to operate from. We can provide the weapons and training, but we need local knowledge and support. The Alliance leaders discussed the proposal for hours. Some were worried about the risks. Others feared that they would be trading one military alliance for another. But in the end, they all agreed on one thing. The humans had saved them when no one else would. They deserved trust. The treaty was signed 3 days later in a simple ceremony in the rebuilt government building. Admiral Morrison signed for Earth, while Commander Zektar signed for the Alliance. The document created the Terran Alliance Coalition, a new political and military organization dedicated to defending freedom in the galaxy. This is just the beginning, Morrison said as they shook hands. Together, we are going to change everything. The first joint training exercises began the next week. Human officers worked with Alliance crews, teaching them new tactics and weapon systems. Alliance scientists shared their knowledge with human engineers, helping to improve Earth's technology. Captain Lisa Turner, recovered from her injuries in the battle, established the first joint training academy on Altara Prime, human and Alliance. Officers studied together, learning to fight as a unified force. Captain Ryan Blake took command of a mixed squadron of human destroyers and Alliance frigates. His ships began patrolling the border regions, hunting for Vorthan scouts and gathering intelligence on enemy movements. Captain Maria Santos worked with Alliance engineers to develop new ship designs that combined human weapons with Alliance technology. The first prototype vessels were already under construction. Most importantly, the humans shared their most valuable resource, their fighting spirit. Alliance crews learned that battles were not won by having the biggest ships or the most advanced weapons. They were won by courage, determination, and the refusal to give up when things looked impossible. 6 months later, the first Liberation Fleet departed from Altara Prime, 200 ships, half human and half Alliance, carrying a message of hope to the conquered worlds. They were commanded by Admiral Morrison and staffed by crews who had learned to fight. Together, the Vorthan Empire had ruled through fear for too long. Now they would learn what happened when free people fought back. Commander, Zektar watched the fleet disappear into hyperspace from the observation deck of the new coalition headquarters. Beside him stood Admiral Morrison's second-in-command, Captain Jennifer Walsh, who had been left behind to coordinate the next phase of the war. "Do you think they will succeed?" Zektar asked. Captain Walsh smiled. "Admiral Morrison has never lost a battle, and now he has the finest Alliance fleet in the galaxy backing him up. The Vorthans are about to discover what humans learned long ago. What is that? That freedom is worth fighting for, and that those who fight for freedom can never truly be defeated." As the stars wheeled overhead, the galaxy prepared for a new chapter in its history. The age of Vorthan domination was ending. The age of the Terran Alliance coalition was about to begin, and somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the message was spreading to every enslaved world. Help was coming, carried by ships that flew the flags of Earth and the Alliance together. No cry for help would go unanswered ever again.